Much please be seated, Honorable Minister Aduyam.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I wish at the very outset to express my thanks and appreciation to the Honorable Prime Minister, who since he came at the helm of this government has always a soft corner for the most vulnerable groups of our society and the workers. All the budget of this government have been prepared under his able leadership along this philosophy and his vision for a more inclusive society. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, allow me here itself make it very clear that I am not praising the Honorable Prime Minister in the hope of being eligible to stand as candidate or to gain ticket for the next elections. As Honorable Shakil Mohammed said earlier during the day in his intervention. What a joke made by the Honorable Member. But I will not blame him. Maybe this is how it might work elsewhere. But it is definitely not how it works in this government, where we are assessed by our competencies and the efforts we put in our duty as elected member of this National Assembly. I, just like the other members of this side of the House, as my colleague, Honorable Deepak Balgobin mentioned earlier in his intervention, we praise the Prime Minister for his hard work, his ability, his vision to take this country to greater heights, his strong determination and willingness to improve the lives and standard of living of each and every individual living in this country, especially the most vulnerable. The bold and unprecedented measures taken under such difficult economic circumstances speaks for itself. I will have the opportunity to elaborate more during my speech. So, I wish to make it very clear to the Honorable Member that we do not praise this Prime Minister so that we can stand as candidate for the next elections. We praise this Prime Minister because he has proved that he deserves all the praises, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, next, I would like to congratulate my colleague, the Minister of Finance, Economic Planning and Development, for presenting the third budget of this government. This budget aims primarily at restoring the purchasing power of all Mauritians and consolidating the welfare state. In spite of the international economic turmoil, geopolitical changes, and global health challenges, my colleague, the Honorable Dr. Padayachi, has succeeded in this budget to meet the expectations of the different segments of the society. The workers, SMEs, the elderly, the youth, and more importantly, the vulnerable groups have been given due consideration. He has skillfully crafted a budget that contains a series of measures to consolidate social justice, redynamize the agro-industry, alleviate the hardships of the poor, and promote the well-being of the Mauritians. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I wish to remind the House that last year's budget focused on recovery, revival, and resilience. Now, that the economy is recovering, we have come forward with a budget for the people, with the people. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, allow me to briefly highlight the salient features of this budget. First, we propose a series of measures, amongst others, payment of a monthly income allowance of 1,000 rupees to all employees drawing less than 15,000, and an increase in basic retirement pension by a minimum of 1,000 rupees to restore the purchasing power of the population. These measures will benefit more than 650,000 persons directly, Mr. Speaker. Second, we have abolished municipal tax to create an equitable treatment between rural and urban residents. 110,000 households will benefit from this measure. Third, we have increased subsidies for cooking gas, rice, and flour, and introduced price control on several basic commodities. An amount of 500 million rupees has been allocated to the State Trading Corporation for importation and sale of essential products at a subsidized rate. These measures also, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, will greatly alleviate the burdens of the poorest section of our population and mitigate rising prices of basic commodities. Fourth, we are introducing regressive pricing for pharmaceutical products to contain price increases. Fifth, we are consolidating the welfare state through further increase in social benefits for the elderly, children, widows, and people with disabilities, and increasing the financial assistance for overseas medical treatment. In fact, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, the budget provides 45.4 billion rupees for social transfers compared to 37.7 billion rupees in 2021-2022 budget. Monsieur le Vice-président, plus socialiste que ça, on meurt. Six, we have introduced several incentives in the agro sector to encourage planters to produce local products for local consumption, to reduce our dependence on imports, and achieve a higher level of self-sufficiency, particularly at a time when the war in Ukraine is disrupting world food supply and creating food shortages. Monsieur le Vice-président, ce budget est allé au-delà des attentes de la population et apporte un soulagement aux démunis et la classe moyenne qui faisaient face à une érosion de leur pouvoir d'achat. L'histoire retiendra que ce gouvernement a pu faire ce qu'aucun gouvernement a fait pour les groupes vulnérables de notre société. Permettez-moi ici, Monsieur le Vice-président, de citer Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. Je cite, « Pour ce qui est de l'avenir, il ne s'agit pas de le prévoir, mais de le rendre possible. » Fin de citation. C'est ce qu'on fait en tant que gouvernement responsable à travers ce budget, Monsieur le Vice-président. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, this government will go down in history as a government which has not spared any means and efforts to protect and safeguard the rights of the workers and the vulnerable groups. This government dared since 2014 to come up with innovative and bold measures that no previous government, the so-called socialist government, had the courage to come forward. Since 2014, we have increased basic pensions for the elderly, widows, orphans, and disabled persons, and introduced unprecedented measures such as the minimum wage, the negative income tax, the portable retirement gratuity scheme, the wage assistance and self-employed assistance scheme, in which government injected not less than 27 billion rupees and saved more than 100,000 jobs. In this budget, we have announced a series of measures to alleviate the suffering of the poor and help them to face the world food price inflation, which is beyond the control of this government. Monsieur le Vice-président, cette panoplie de mesures prises depuis 2014 clairement démontre la volonté de ce gouvernement de promouvoir le bien-être et l'épanouissement de nos compatriotes au bas de l'échelle et le plus démunis de notre société. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, as a caring and responsible government, we have done our best within our means to provide maximum support and protection to the vulnerable groups. We shall continue to do so, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, because we firmly believe that people should be at the center of development. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, the 2022-2023 budget is widely recognized as a forward-looking one, which provides the means for realizing our vision for a society where unity, equality, solidarity, as well as social harmony remain entrenched as core values in our socio-economic fabrics. The policy measures outlined in the 2022-2023 budget do not only cater for economic recovery, but also at creating an inclusive society. In fact, every Mauritian agrees that in the present context, the Minister of Finance, Economic Planning and Development had no other option than to come up with a budget that would mitigate the adverse impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Ukraine-Russia war and climate change, stimulate investment and enrich the creative potential of critical sectors while protecting the weaker section of our society. In short, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, it is as rightly advocated by the Honorable Prime Minister. Budget 2022-2023, c'est une continuation de philosophie qui nous fait toujours aimer le bien-être de toute la population. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, it is the first time that even some of the members of the opposition recognize that the budget is a socialist one. And government has gone the extra mile to support the vulnerable groups and middle class. All trade unions, consumer associations, and senior citizen associations widely acknowledge that this budget will greatly improve the living condition of the vulnerable groups and middle class. Let me quote what Honorable Paul Béranger said about this budget, and which was reported in Le Défi newspaper on Wednesday, 8 June 2022. I quote, "Il y a eu un certain effort, mais ce n'est pas suffisant." End of quote. This is a clear indication that the budget 2022-2023 budget has gone beyond the expectation of everybody and taken the members of the opposition by surprise. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, we have to reckon with the fact that this budget has been crafted against the backdrop of uncertainties. The economic impacts emanating from Russia's invasion of Ukraine are far-reaching and adversely affecting prices of commodities, and compromising world peace. All economic fundamentals are being questioned, and even IMF and the World Bank are constantly reviewing the global growth projections. Mauritius, being a remote country from all its main export markets and tourism markets, is likely to bear the brunt of external shocks. Hats off to my colleague, the Honorable Dr. Padachi, who in spite of his difficult international context, succeeded in producing a budget which protects the vulnerable groups and middle class and addresses the concerns of the population at large. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, before dwelling on my ministry, I would like to touch on one particular aspect which is very dear to me, that is the youth of this country. The youth is our most valuable asset for the future of this country. They have the potential and intellectual capabilities which, if properly harnessed and guided, could bring the country to new heights of development. Youth development and empowerment has always been our topmost priority. In all budget, this government has introduced several measures, incentives, and schemes to enable them to develop their creative talents, their innate skills, and provide them with opportunities to develop their own business and contribute to the socio-economic development of Mauritius. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, it is a vision of this government to create a nation of entrepreneurs, and we are providing all the facilities, and now it is up to our youth to grasp the opportunities to shape their own destiny and become their own boss. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I am one of the many vivid examples. Let me quote Roy Bennett, author of The Light in the Heart. I quote, "Believe in yourself. You are braver than you think, more talented than you know, and capable of more than you imagine." End of quote. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I would also like to express my gratitude to the Honorable Prime Minister and the Honorable Minister of Finance for the consideration given to my constituency in this 2022-2023 budget. In the budget 2021-2022, provisions were made for the implementation of several infrastructural and development projects in different regions of my constituency. Here, I would like to report to the House that the implementation of all the projects are already on and are progressing. My constituents and myself have been amazed that in this budget also, constituency number 10 has not been left behind, and provisions have been made for new projects to, amongst others, improve the drainage system and mitigate flood risk, replacement of pipes for better water supply, and other infrastructural projects in different regions. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, on behalf of my constituents, I wish to express my gratitude to my colleague, the Minister of Finance, Economic Planning and Development, for this gesture. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, it is undeniable that the budget 2022-2023 has created a feel-good factor among the people of this country. The population recognizes the efforts made by this government to extend additional support to all segments of the population. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I shall now refer to my ministry. My ministry comprises 4 important divisions, namely the Human Resource Management Division, the Human Resource Development Division, Occupational Safety and Health Division, and the Public Sector Business Transformation Bureau. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, the Human Resource Management Division of my ministry has a key role in ensuring that ministries and departments are properly manned with appropriate human resources to implement government policies, programs, and projects providing quality service to the public. This division is also responsible for the prescription of scheme of service for all grades, which are the basis for recruitment in the public sector. During this financial year, my ministry has prescribed 101 schemes of service. Recently, my ministry has set up a consultative committee to facilitate the consultation process between line ministries and federation, trade unions, and fast-track the prescription of the scheme of service. Over and above, the Human Resource Management Division provides guidelines to ministries and departments regarding conditions of employment in the public service and in the implementation of recommendations of the PRB report. It also assists ministries and departments in the settlement of labor disputes. During this financial year, around 3,400 cases relating to conditions of service have been processed. The Employment Relations Unit, which operates under the aegis of that division, hold regular meetings with federations of trade unions to sort out issues and reach consensus on disputes and discuss HR matters that are of concern to them. In the course of this financial year, 16 meetings were held with the Federation and trade union to address more than 150 representations and identify solutions to the satisfaction of all parties. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, last year, provision was made for the filling of around 9,400 vacancies, and by the end of this financial year, around 60% of these vacancies will be filled, which represent a marked improvement compared to financial year 2020-2021, when only 30% of vacancies were filled. This budget has provided for the filling of 8,353 vacancies in the public service to ensure that the ministries and departments have the adequate capacity to deliver according to the mandate. My ministry will, in collaboration with a different commission, set up a mechanism to fast-track the recruitment process. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, training and development is critical for a modern and vibrant public service. To this end, PRB Report 2021 has once more stressed on training and development as an essential element of the overall human resource management in the public sector to sustain employees' continual growth and nurture a culture of performance. The PRB has even gone further in its 2021 report, recommending the designation of a training manager for the implementation of training programs, carry out periodic training needs assessment, and to look after skill upgrading, capacity building, and enhancement of competencies of all public officers to enable them to perform their duties efficiently and effectively. Last year, in spite of restriction on mass gathering, around 10,000 public officers of different grades were provided work-oriented training by the Civil Service College to keep them abreast of new techniques, technologies, and skill. Around 8,300 public officers completed training in line with the requirements of Occupational Safety and Health Act by the Occupational Safety and Health Division of my ministry. And some 1,700 public officers have been trained through bilateral support of donor countries under the Technical Assistance Program of my ministry. In total, around 20,000 public officers were provided training during this financial year. This largely exceeded the set-out target of 15,000 that I announced last year. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I wish to emphasize that in our training program, employees in the workmen group, which are the first point of contact with the public, are provided with relevant training to prepare them to interact properly with the public and provide a quality service with courtesy. Over the past 2 years, some 2,000 employees in the workmen group have been trained. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, safety and health of public officers is a top priority of my ministry. The Safety and Health Division of my ministry has a responsibility to ascertain that safety and health norms are being complied with to minimize risk of accident at workplaces and ensure that the work environment is safe. In this context, a dedicated safety and health officer of my ministry has been attached to every ministry and department on a full-time or part-time basis, and during this financial year, more than 7,500 safety audits, 500 new risk assessments, and 550 fire drills have been carried out in different ministries and departments. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, my ministry has also introduced an occupational safety and health management system to provide a framework for public organization to systematically control its safety and health risk, reduce the potential risk for incident, and facilitate compliance with international safety and health norms. This system is currently being implemented in 19 ministries and departments, covering 77 work sites in the public service. It is expected that once this system is implemented, it will help to bring cultural change in a planned and systematic manner and foster positive health and safety culture. My ministry has developed a framework agreement to facilitate procurement of fire safety items by line ministries to enable them to comply with mandatory fire safety requirements and obtain their fire certificate. I am pleased to inform the House that Dr. A.J. Hospital has already developed its fire evacuation plan in collaboration with the Mauritius Fire and Rescue Service, and this is now being extended to all other regional hospitals. During this financial year, my ministry has also developed a protocol for the management of injury and illness at the workplace to serve as guideline to accounting officers on how to manage work-related injuries and illness within ministries and departments. My ministry annually organizes an event to mark the World Day for Safety and Health at Work and to sensitize all ministries and departments on the importance of the safety and health at work. This year, we organized 1 week of activities at the level of ministries and departments to raise awareness among the public officers on safety and health at work. This culminated with the holding of a multi-sectoral workshop. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, the COVID-19 pandemic has given rise to a new normal, where innovative technologies will be one of the drivers of the new economy. It is therefore imperative for the public service to embrace the cutting-edge technologies to enhance quality of service delivery. The Public Sector Business Transformation Bureau, which operates under the aegis of my ministry, is actively engaged in the implementation of several projects that have a transformative impact on public service delivery and geared towards the improvement of quality of service. Every ministry and major government department has a transformation implementation committee that oversees, monitors, and evaluates the development and implementation of its business transformation initiatives. As of June 2022, 342 business transformation initiatives were being implemented across the public service, out of which 85 have already been completed and 238 are still under implementation. The Bureau was assigned the responsibility to monitor the implementation of 5 key performance indicators adopted by government in respect of training, good governance, fire safety compliance, prescription of scheme of service, and EHR to accelerate the process of transformation across the public service and promote integrity. The implementation of these KPIs are closely being followed up by the Bureau with all ministries and departments. The Bureau is currently developing a smart process manual to provide guidelines to ministries and departments on how to streamline processes and ensure an efficient and effective use of resources. Once this manual will be ready, all ministries and departments will be required to embark on the conduct of business process re-engineering exercises with a view to eliminating wastages, reducing inefficiency, and improving quality of service delivery. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, the Bureau will continue to play a pivotal role in engaging ministries and departments in the adoption of innovative and emerging technologies in a bid to improve service delivery. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, it is a vision of this government to transform the public service into an efficient, innovative, and creative agency, which is an active driver in the nation-building process, with officers with a new mindset that focuses on national targets rather than on routine administrative jobs only. In this context, my ministry is currently implementing several projects and schemes that aim at promoting excellence in public service delivery, facilitating adoption of new technologies, and upgrading the skills of the public officers. Last year, I announced to the House that my ministry will construct a state-of-the-art infrastructure at Le Réduit Triangle to provide the Civil Service College Mauritius with a modern facility to enable it to offer to all public officers with 40 to 60 hours of meaningful work-related training opportunities annually, as recommended in the PRB report 2013. I am happy to report to the House that construction has already started and work is in progress. The construction is expected to be completed before the end of next year. This infrastructure will enable the college to operate as a training institution in line with its vision to become a regional center of excellence for training. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, my ministry is presently implementing a cost-effective and flexible human resource management system, EHR, for the public service using open source technology. The scope of the project focuses on the development of core HR functionalities being used at the level of ministries and departments and covers the following components: employee sourcing, employee benefits, leave management system, training, discipline, and self-service. Phase 1 of the project, which consisted of the implementation of the leave management system on a pilot basis at my ministry and the Ministry of Information Technology, Communication and Innovation has been successfully completed. The leave management system is fully operational in the two ministries, and now public officers of these ministries can apply for their leaves online and obtain approval thereof through SMS and email. Moreover, the officers can check their leave balances. The phase 2 of the project is currently being implemented in 11 ministries covering 22 organizations, representing 25% of public officers. The phase is expected to be completed by end of this financial year. Phase 3 will be covered. The remaining 67 organizations would be completed by the end of financial year 2022-2023. The EHR platform will interface with other government IT systems relating to public offices. For example, the e-payslip developed by the CISD can be accessed by public officers on the EHR platform. Similarly, the Accountant General Office is developing an online passage benefit system which will be linked to the EHR system and be available on the EHR platform. The EHR system will enhance efficiency and effectiveness in use of human resources, assist management in succession planning, and generate reports for policy decisions. Public officers can obtain information about their leaves, passage benefits, scheme of service, and personal HR data through the click of a button. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, as announced in the budget speech 2020-2021, my ministry has introduced a new sandbox framework to promote the adoption of emerging technologies in ministries and departments. As at date, 34 project proposals have been received via the online sandbox portal, out of which 13 projects from 8 ministries and departments had been retained based on their transformative impact on service delivery. My ministry has embarked on the implementation of a collaborative platform and document management system for the scheme of service unit and is providing technical support for the implementation of a vehicle management system. In this budget, provision to the tune of 2 million rupees has been made to finance projects under the sandbox framework. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, government business and public service delivery were adversely affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly during the nationwide lockdown in March 2020 and March 2021. So far, not even a single ministry or department has a business continuity plan to ensure a continuous service delivery with minimum interruption in times of crisis. During this financial year, the Civil Service College, with the financial assistance of the United Nations Development Programme, is assisting 13 ministries to formulate the business continuity plans. In the next financial year, provision has been made by the Civil Service College to continue to coach other ministries and departments on the preparation of the business continuity plan. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, such a plan will ensure that in times of crisis and calamities, there is continuity in big government business, and the citizens are not deprived of government services. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, EDMS is a key driver of public sector transformation and ensuring business continuity. In this context, UNDP has agreed to provide technical and financial assistance for the implementation of the EDMS on a pilot basis at my ministry. The procurement exercise for this project is currently being carried out by the UNDP, and tender will be awarded shortly. The project will be implemented by the end of this year. On the basis of outcome of the project, government will consider possibility of implementing the project across the public service. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, my ministry pursued the implementation of the Enhancement of Work Environment Program, EWEP, for financial year 2021-2022 and has provided financial support for projects relating to protection of public officers against COVID-19 infection. As at date, 1,200 projects have been funded under this program. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, experience has shown that organizations which embrace innovative ideas and international best practices are more resilient to external environment factors and are able to perform better. In this context, my ministry has since 2006 introduced a Public Service Excellence Award, which provides public institutions with an effective tool to improve the quality of service delivery and create new ways of doing government business, to facilitate socio-economic development and increase wealth for the betterment of the nation. This award is now becoming an annual feature that serves as a motivational tool for the continuous improvement of our service delivery. The award is running in its 14th year and has so far attracted 552 public organizations. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, my ministry has a responsibility to ensure that the recommendations contained in the PRB Report 2021 are duly implemented in the public sector. In this context, a standing committee has been set up at the level of our ministry to oversee the effective implementation of PRB recommendations and guideline ministries on the proper interpretation of recommendations in the event they are facing difficulties. So far, 70% of actions recommended in the PRB report have already been implemented. Following the publication of the PRB 2021 report, my ministry received 216 representations on errors and omissions, which have been transmitted to the PRB for consideration in its addendum report. Mr. Speaker, sir, over the past 2 years, the Public Officers Welfare Council could not organize major welfare activities for the benefit of public officers due to sanitary restrictions and limitation on mass gathering. The Council did organize certain online activities, such as art and essay competition, and as from next financial year, the Council will resume all its activities. I wish to thank my colleague, the Honorable Dr. Padachi, for increasing the grant of the Public Officers Welfare Council from 3.5 million rupees to 5 million rupees. This will allow the Council to recruit its own staff and build up capacity within the organization. Mr. Speaker, sir, with a view to promoting a healthy workforce and providing an avenue for public officers to maintain a good work-life balance, my ministry, in collaboration with the Public Officers Welfare Council, has set up a modern fitness center that caters for the public officers of different ages and fitness level under the supervision of trained and qualified instructors. It is equipped with the latest and high-tech fitness accessories, high-end cardio machines, and other heavy-duty exercise equipment. It is the first time that the government has set up such a facility for the benefit of public officers. This initiative bears testimony to the importance that this government attaches to the welfare of the public officers. Monsieur le Vice-président, le budget 2022-2023 est un budget socialiste qui correspond parfaitement aux attentes de non seulement le plus vulnérable, mais également de tous les segments de la population. C'est un budget qui répond aux besoins des différents secteurs économiques. Les mesures proposées dans ce budget sont allées au-delà des espérances de toutes les parties prenantes. C'est un budget qui vise à combattre la pauvreté, à créer plus d'emplois pour les jeunes et les femmes, et stimuler davantage les investissements, soutenir les petites et moyennes entreprises et réduire notre dépendance aux importations alimentaires. Above all, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, this budget is demonstrating to the world that solidarity matters. Solidarity is critical for social peace and cohesion, and that this government means business and is walking the talk. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, let me quote the former President of the United States of America, Barack Obama, said, I quote, A budget is more than a series of numbers on a page. It is an embodiment of our values, end of quote. That this is what we have done in this budget, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Honorable Mohammed.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. Listening to the Minister of Civil Service reminds me of the visit late Lee Kuan Yew, former Prime Minister of Singapore, when he visited Mauritius. A journalist asked him a question: how does he explain the success of Singapore? And he replied, the recipe is very simple. In every ministry in Singapore, the person that I put at the head of the ministry, I make sure that he or she is the most competent person in that ministry. And he did not stop there. He said, and the minister that I choose to put in that ministry, I make sure that he is more competent than the person that I put up in charge of that ministry. This is a simple recipe that Singapore has used, and it's food for thought for the Minister of Civil Service. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I thank you for giving me the opportunity to intervene on the presentation of the budget exercise 2022-2023, titled "The Only True Prosperity is Shared Prosperity." An unusually long speech of nearly 2 hours from the Honourable Minister of Finance, if you compare it by local standards, and more so if you compare it with international standards. For example, in the UK this year, the Chancellor of Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, delivered the spring statement of 2022, the equivalent of the budget speech, in just 28 minutes, giving only the guiding principles. He did not consider it necessary to list down all the little drain and potholes projects to be implemented in every remote village in the United Kingdom. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, the budget contained a dog's dinner of measures, the good, the bad, and the very ugly. If you read the headlines of the newspapers, you will definitely come to the conclusion that this is a popular budget presenting giveaways to everyone in sight. But anyone who has just an ordinary level in economics must be concerned at the virtual absence of any fiscal responsibility or long-term thought for a country in dire debt. It is another of this government's Christmas tree budget. The Minister of Finance and his Eminence Grise consulted with everyone, then he just gave them all that they asked for, putting the country into deeper debt, full of pretty presents, but based on utterly false promises about growth and tourist revenues. You have to go back to the 1980s to find a growth rate of 8% or more. And we have never had 1.4 million tourists, even in the best of times. What we have here is nothing but a false prospectus. If he were the director of a commercial company with this prospectus, under commercial law, he would deserve not a long thumping ovation from his friends, but he will be in big trouble. One might have expected to find in this voluminous package some forward thinking, but the whole collection of electoral bribes masquerading as goodies for the people lacks any serious planning. Throughout his overlong diatribe, there was scarcely a word about serious long-term planning. Perhaps he has just forgotten he holds the brief as minister responsible for economic planning and development. He has given so much away, he has given away so much when the national coffers are empty and we are up to our necks in debt repayment. Did he mention that? No. And it is not his money he's giving away. It is the money not just of current taxpayers today, but that of our children and our children's children. What is the long-term planning? The long-term prospect for this country are before us in a great abscess of debt. even after plundering the carefully secured reserves of the Bank of Mauritius. As a matter of fact, I've said it before, this malaise of lack of planning in the country started with the first Minister of Finance of the MSM in 2015, Vishnu Lakshmi Naraidu, who got rid of the program-based budgeting that the Labour Party-led government had initiated in 2005 and which was functioning very well by 2014. But what to do? There has been so much harm done to the essential institutions since 2014, and the demise of the planning is just one act of the ugly acts of this regime. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, as an elected member in the capital city of Port Louis, I have observed the reaction of the Minister of Local Government just after reading of the budget speech. I think he was the first one to leave his seat and to cross over to congratulate the Minister of Finance. He went and shook his hand, I saw. I believe the abolition of municipal taxes has to do with this bout of excitement. An electoral promise which is being implemented with a delay of 2.5 years, as the House will recall, that it was in the electoral manifesto of both the MSM and the Labour Party-led alliance. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, in congratulating the Minister of Finance, I hope that the Minister of Local Government, excited as he was on Budget Day, has been able to convince the Minister of Finance to compensate the financial shortfall so as not to lead to falling level of service being provided by the municipal councils. We shall be very watchful over this in the interest of the citizens, as you will recall how since 2019 to date, members of the opposition have constantly been bringing to the House during parliamentary questions and adjournment time so many problems concerning faulty streetlights, household waste not being collected on time, the dangerous state of many streets, inundation from flooding, and rampant neglect of other public amenities. As a reminder, the last time the Municipal Council of Port Louis distributed waste bins to the citizens of Port Louis, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, was during the days of the Labour Party, the same government that spearheaded a program for Maurice Île-du-Rap. And yet, the budget speech at paragraph 2013 to 2016 talks about the cleaning and cleaning of Mauritius through a national environment cleaning agency that has been set up under the Prime Minister's office to develop in our national cleaning strategy, and that a sum of 1 billion rupees is being allocated. Please do the simple things first and distribute bins to the citizen to start with, and then we talk about the big strategies later. The second planning issue is that of the rise in pension of 1,000 rupees to 2,000 rupees, which is overdue, because our pensioners have not had a compensation since 2020, and meanwhile the cost of living has increased by so much. But what is worrisome about this is that it is being taken prematurely from the CSG. This comes with two repercussions. Firstly, the CSG might have to be increased in the future, and secondly, when the pension payment will eventually reach 13,500 rupees, our children and grandchildren will have to shoulder this very heavy burden. For some years now, the IMF has declared our pensions policy unsustainable. Their warnings have fallen on deaf ears, and step by step, we find this government dishing out goodies when the cupboard is bare and just kicking the hugely accumulating can of public debt down the road. Hanging an increasing burden of debt round the necks of every citizen whilst creating the illusion that we are riding the crest of prosperity. A false illusion, a false prospectus. I shall now move to some specific sectors, the multi-billion dollar rupees ones, which I've been following here in Parliament, and the first one is social housing. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I watched the NBC News of last Friday, more specifically on la cérémonie de remise des clés of housing units at Martaba. I was shocked with what I heard and saw on TV, and that is the Honorable Obigadu, who is not here, in the presence of the Indian High Commissioner, delivering a most political speech. He went on to mention figures of the number of housing units built by the Labour Party over the mandates 2005 to 2010 and to 2010-2014, at a time of rejoice when families have come to take possession of their housing keys at long last. And as a matter of fact, the MBC, out of the speech of the Honorable Obigadu, made a PowerPoint presentation which was broadcast on TV. Here it is. I took a photo of this. Ancien gouvernement, 2006 à 2010, premier mandat, 1900 maisons construites. 2011 à 2014, deuxième mandat, 550 maisons construites. People come to take their keys and you are doing this kind of speech in front of the ambassador of India. But since we are at it, let me ask through you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, why did the Honorable Obigadu start with 2005? Why not before? And social housing, is it limited to units delivered by the NSDC only? The answer is no. The Assembly, and indeed the people, especially the senior citizens, will recall that it was the Labour Party, led by Sir Sivasagar Ramgoolam, that started with the construction of social housing units in Mauritius through the Central Housing Authority after Cyclone Carol, being given that after the passage of that cyclone, many families lost their homes. By the way, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, since we are talking about the MBC and Sir Sivasagar Ramgoolam, did you notice how the MBC has reverted back to calling SSR Botanical Garden as Jardin des Pamplemousses and SSR International Airport as l'Aéroport de Présence? Airbrushing the father of our nation out of the picture, a technique commonly placed under Marshal Stalin of the USSR. Anyway, coming back to social housing, you know how many families benefited of a CHE housing unit, Mr. Speaker, sir? 19,500 families at a time when much less families were living in Mauritius. So those days, 19,500 families must have represented at least 10% of the household in those early days. And the greatest democratization to home ownership, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, did not stop here. During the course of time, the CHA housing units were sold to the families for a low price. And in 2005, under the Prime Ministership of Dr. Navin Ramgoolam, the state land onto which these same housing units stand and other leases granted for social housing, including NSDC complexes, were sold to the families at 2,000 rupees per lot. A plot of land at 2,000 rupees, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. Following an amendment that was brought to the State Land Act. I was at the Ministry of Housing at the material time, and I know it very well. As a matter of fact, the sale of the plots in the region of Port Louis, Obigadu is not here, since the MSM has come to power, and I even put a parliamentary question on this, on the state land in my constituency, has since sale of state land in Port Louis has ceased, notwithstanding the fact that people's dossiers are at the notary's office. I fail to understand why, and I hope someday he will provide that with an explanation. Furthermore, I can understand in Page Geometric there was a decision, but in Port Louis, Honorable Ganu, you know the dossier well. Why in Port Louis people's dossiers are stuck at the notary's office for years now and they don't get their contracts? Furthermore, in comparing the figures from 2005 to 2014 and 2014 onwards, I hope the Minister of Housing has factored in the fact that the Labour Party-led government has, before the general elections of 2014, I was there for some time at the NSDC as managing director, initiated the process for housing at Petit Bel-Air, Melrose, Goirati, Notre-Dame, Bassin, Nehru-Nagle in Flac, Chebel-A, Camp-du-Masque, Henrietta, Goodlands, Saint-Julien-d'Otman, Madame Azon, Souillac, and Morgou, and that these sites had actually reached different stages in the implementation process, and they were either at a stage where the contracts for construction were already awarded, some were at evaluation of bid stage. For some, their contract for soil investigation were already awarded, and some even had reached the first step of financial clearances being sought at the Ministry of Finance. That was the progress at the end of 2014. And these housing units that were initiated by the government, Labour Party-led government, were continued, and then, like my colleague is saying, they could prime afterwards, and they put it as their bilan. This is what it is all about. On a different note, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, but since and still in the domain of social housing, did you know that the grant of 10,000 units for casting of roof slab is also part of the social housing program? And I do recall, when I was MD of the NSDC, a cumulative total of around 60,000 units of also household had already benefited from this grant at the material time. Furthermore, the figure must be more now. But furthermore, I must emphasize that the last time the grant amount was revised, 200,000 rupees, was during budget exercise of 2018. Since then, the official construction price index of Statistics Mauritius has increased by 26% from March 2018 to March 2022. But I personally think that this is the higher figure. Construction has increased by much more. So, the 100,000 rupees grant today is not sufficient. And I was hoping that the Minister of Housing would have succeeded in lobbying to raise this amount, as is currently expected by the population. 100,000 rupees in 2018 for construction today, this amount is, you cannot compare. It's too low. Let me now move with some further issues on social housing. The first one has to do with the now overzealous program for 12,000 units, touted once upon a time to cost 12 billion rupees. How much is the estimated cost today, when we all know that it costs at least 2 million rupees to build an apartment of 3 rooms, without the provisions of passenger lifts? The budget speech is silent on this. The project value, according to me, for 12,000 housing units must be at least 24 billion rupees. By the way, I would advise limiting the number of floors for the flat blocks to a maximum of 4, so as to avoid the need for the provision of lifts in the social housing unit, because le bon fonctionnement des syndics a été un casse-tête perpétuel et les ascenseurs resteront en panne pendant longtemps. Secondly, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, the implementation of this project that was first announced 2 years ago during budget exercise 2020-21 is becoming more and more like La Rivière des Anguilles Dam. Every year you hear about it, but you don't see it. Gaïson, mais pas Gaïzimas. 4 billion rupees was the forecasted expenditure in the last financial year, but it was revised to 100 million rupees. Underperformance indeed. But where did that 100 million rupees go? To build housing units? The answer is no. The 100 million rupees has been used to fund the lavish expenditure of the new social living development, the special purpose vehicle that has been set up to implement this project since its creation in 2019. To start with, there has been recruitment of the boys and girls with very fat pay packages and expensive officers and luxurious cars. A chairman, 1 group CEO, 2 chief operations officers, 5 directors, 1 general manager for project department, 1 group project manager, to name but a few. The NSLD is now occupying very luxurious offices at NPF building of Rose Hill at 42 rupees per meter square, and at the Cyber City for even higher, and for no genuine reason, progressively leaving the office at Royal Complex in Rose Hill, costing a mere 25 rupees per meter square. NSDC has been based at the Royal Complex for 23 years now. Never had a complaint on behalf of the public as well as clients or staff, that the place is not appropriate. One thing about this company, the NSLD, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, and the people managing it with their spendthrift attitude, they are spending money of the taxpayers as if there is no tomorrow. But then, it seems to be a common feature of this government, head-bent on stoking inflation, increasing the poverty of the poorest, while swanning around in guzzling limousines and working in deluxe offices the country can't afford. Talking about throwing money down the drain, let me update the House of an outstanding issue that I had raised in parliamentary question of 7 December 2021, when I mentioned in the House that there was a strange happening which I never encountered as managing director of the NSGC, and this is the case of a dispute which went for arbitration between NSGC and Super Construction Limited. In the meantime, the latter, Super Construction, has won the arbitration, and the NSGC is now compelled to pay 41 million rupees in compensation when it was the first to strike with a report to the police it had filed for wrongdoings by the contractor, bearing OB number 6817/2021, which I had even given to the Minister in Parliament. And he told me, you have something to say, to go to the ICAC. That was his attitude. And if you think this stops here, you're wrong, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. Super Construction has filed another case against the NSGC for 103 million rupees, and due to the amateurish setup at the NSGC and the NSLD, I see the Minister of Housing is back, with the most incompetent chairman and CEO, I'm afraid they can lose this case as well. Le domaine du logement social est un bateau sans gouvernail, Monsieur le Président. Let me now move to public infrastructure, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. I was reading what Mr. Jean-Claude Delestrac wrote in l'Express of 15 May 2022. I quote, « J'ai été ahuri d'entendre un ministre de la République pour répondre aux opposants de la construction d'une route dans une région écologiquement sensible, arguer que les habitants des circonscriptions 5 à 12 avaient bien droit, eux aussi, à leur autoroute. Bientôt, un mur, peut-être, il existe déjà dans les têtes. » End of quotation. I subsequently went and looked for which minister he was referring to. And I was dumbfounded to know that it was the Honorable Hari Ram during a press conference at MSM headquarters, following a parliamentary question I had asked about the M4 highway, that same highway that started in Forbach and which ends up in Plaine-Maillan, passing through the Vallée de Ferney. Now, what did the minister really mean? Or was it just another slip of the tongue, like the omelette blunder? I wonder. Mr. Speaker, sir, I subsequently explained the rationale of my asking the question. I failed to understand what has, first of all, I tried to understand the rationale. First of all, what has constituency number 5 and 8 got to do with the M4 highway, which start in Forbach right down to Plaine-Maillan? So his meaning was something else. But then, that's him. Yeah, that's it. You know, there is a famous Sanskrit saying, and it stands as follows. Vinas kale viprit buddhi. You understand?
Translate.
Made famous in Mauritius by the Honorable Arvind Boulel.
Translate.
Quand la fin costait, l'esprit s'avérait. Everything, the reasoning is, anyway. Regarding the construction of the road, regarding the construction of the link roads, bypasses and flyovers to the tune of billions to the road development, to the road decongestion program, I also believe that it's good to have equity in the distribution of infrastructure across the country, unlike what Honorable Hari Ram is saying, and that construction creates more economic activity. But, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I know there is a discrepancy in this discourse at this moment. Honorable Minister of Infrastructure himself in press conference on Saturday last has stated that we need to build more roads because there are more vehicles now in Mauritius. A fundamental question is, will expanding highways and building more roads actually make traffic better or worse? Mr. Speaker, sir, at a time the government is investing massively in the Metro Express project, there is nothing in the budget that encourages people to leave their cars at home and to travel by the metro, which has lost more than 500 million rupees from what I understand. Second factor to consider in terms of road repairs cost, pollution and congestion. Thirdly, I here highlight the theory of induced demand. Building more roads and adding more lanes give the appearance of speeding up traffic. But by encouraging sprawl, it spreads out stores, houses, and jobs, providing more reasons to drive more, thus expanding many people's commutes. It also adds more capacity, which is almost immediately filled up with more cars. Research by Kent Heimel of California State University of Northridge found that adding 1% more road capacity produces the exact same increase in the amount of vehicle miles traveled. There is another report from Transportation for America titled "The Congestion Con." It's all a lie, attesting to that. I would strongly recommend the Minister of Public Infrastructure to read it. And then one should not forget that building more roads is environmentally destructive. Not only for the M4, as it passes to the Vallée de Ferney, but anywhere, and road projects, if not planned properly, can cause more flooding. Which brings me to the domain of construction of drain by NDU. Through COVID-19 project fund, 36 billion rupees was earmarked for spending last year, but only 800 million was actually spent. And then there is this Drain Infrastructure Construction Limited, which actually has a mandate, the fast tracking of implementation of the National Debt Management Program, which funds to the tune of 10.4 billion rupees, according to a cabinet decision of 22 October 2021. Sounds good, even if you can't afford it, the first false illusion of prosperity. I want to emphasize here today in this House that following an article of L'Express of 10 May 2022, and in which I had intervened, entitled "Le premier contrat pour 79 millions alloué sans transparence," the officer in charge of the Drain Infrastructure Construction Limited, Mr. Harudeo Bola, was sacked. The question is, why was Mr. Bola immediately sacked? Who is the officer in charge of that department today? And who is the chairman of that department? Excuse me.
Please, go ahead.
There is something very weird with this company, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. The House will recall that the Honourable Minister of Public Infrastructure, during parliamentary question B1012 earlier this year, was unable to reply to my additional question regarding the modus operandi of this company. He said, we, meaning his ministry, has received a decision from Cabinet to incorporate. That is being worked upon, et en temps et lieu, on va répondre. Meanwhile, paragraph 168 of last week's budget states that an interministerial committee chaired by the Prime Minister will oversee the streamlining of licenses and permits in the construction sector. So this could be the reason why he was unable to reply, because decisions are being taken elsewhere and he was just at the receiving end to implement. In this regard, transparency and contract allocation by this company, I have set another parliamentary question for the next sitting. I would now move to environment and sustainable development domains, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. I was shocked to hear from paragraph 27 of the Minister of Finance speech that we rely on imports for more than 75% of our food requirements. This is much more than what it was in 2014. when you factor in that the number of tourists have considerably reduced in the country today. I have listened to the Honourable Minister of Agri-Industry in press conference last Saturday that we will never reach 100% because we will always import rice and wheat. Fair enough. But who is asking for 100%? For 7 years, the MSM has been in power. Food import has increased substantially. Yet another evidence-based failure. The House will recall that during the Labour Party years, there was locally produced rice in Mauritius by Vita Rice. Rice with ultra-low glycemic index, and the country was planning to reduce its dependency on rice imports by 25%. So much for this government's long-term stewardship. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, at paragraph 172, regarding holders of residence permits, will be given to the opportunity to buy property of a minimum of USD 250,000 outside the existing schemes upon paying 10% contribution to the National Solidarity Levy, makes me think of at least two drawbacks with this. Firstly, landowners, the big ones, will be further encouraged to go for property development rather than food security. Secondly, local home buyers will be priced out of the market. This situation reminds me of former US President Harry Truman. About him, always wanted to have a one-handed economist, because his economists were always telling him that on the one hand there is this, and on the other hand there is that, and that the consequence of this is that he had only one mandate as US President. I now rapidly move to renewable energy. Paragraph 202 states that, no, I was listening earlier, sorry, to the Minister of Public Utilities, Honorable Jolet Jonga, in respect of the production of renewable energy by bagasse. He said that the biomass framework is under preparation. I think he is not aware. A few hours earlier, the Minister of Agro-Industry, Mr. Manish Gobin, stated that the biomass framework has been produced and has been submitted to his office some 2 to 3 weeks back. So, I wish to quote the Honorable Ariane Navarre-Marie, je vais mettre un lot de cette marty. Has it been produced, the biomass framework? Because the Honorable Lejonga said it is being produced. It is being prepared. So anyway, paragraph 202 states that Metro Express will implement photovoltaic farms to cater for its electricity needs at Richelieu and Eben. Now, I have always believed that Metro Express should produce its own electricity. During the days of the Honorable Ganu's predecessor, Mr. Buddha, the House will recall that I put a question, PQ B492, on 3rd July 2018. I had asked him whether in regard to the Metro Express project, he will state inter alia if the generation of electricity from photovoltaic sources from roof of the stations or train or trams is being envisaged, and if not, why not? 4 years, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. This is how long it took the government to come up with a budgetary measure on this. And God knows how long it will take to implement this. And where are the long-term plans for similar schemes for the roofs of schools, hospitals, and other government buildings? Not to mention the long waiting list of those who want to have some solar-generated electricity on their own roofs. We need some joined-up government today to build on the wealth of sunshine for tomorrow. Regarding the measures to incite the purchase of electric vehicles, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I hope that it will come with measures to entice people to charge their cars through renewable sources or at off-peak hours, because if they have to use the grid, otherwise CB will be in deep trouble, managing the peak demand, which is the real problem today. The percentage of renewable energy, instead of increasing, is actually decreasing. From 22.3% in 2020 to 19.83% in 2021. And yet the Minister of Energy says that he is very confident. Now, no mention has been made in the budget from switching from public officers to go for electric vehicles. And it is a real pity that the budget speech does not say anything about the treatment to be dispensed to the people who are on synthetic drugs. In 2014, when Labour Party left office, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, do you know how many cases of synthetic drug patients were admitted to Brownsacre Hospital? This is the figures of the MBC. Only 5 in 2013. In 2019, MBC figures 1,099. This is 2019. How much is it today? Is it 2,000? Is it 3,000? Is it 4,000? We don't know. And yet, the Minister of Finance has taken the trouble to mention, like I said initially, all the drains he will be constructing, but not a single word for treatment to people who are on synthetic drugs. This is most scandalous. And since we are talking about the youth, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, let me mention something that concerns my constituency. 4 minutes, thank you. About the historical football pitch at Saint-Denis called Stade by Rajak, the ex-YMCA stadium, a football ground that has seen emerging some of the best footballers of Mauritius. The pitch is being converted to horse stables, making Saint-Denis lose its green cachet, and not to mention the foul smell that is going to be generated from there, knowing that there are nearby secondary school and even primary school, and the wedding halls, Gymkhana and Tahilbag, Honorable Asnu knows the place well, and will also be a serious nuisance to people, thousands of people who go there for their leisure and also for their regular exercises. No one knows what is the real plan that People Turf PLC has for this plot of land. So, and I wonder whether the Municipal Council of Port Louis, whether the Ministry of Housing and Lands, or the Ministry of Environment has granted EIA license on this. So, as Minister of Local Government, I would make a request to the Honourable Osni to look into this, because no one knows what is being built there at the end of the day. We know horse stables are being built, but what else, we don't know. Right. To conclude, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I wish to add that the aim of any responsible budget is to give a fiscal, economic planning and development path to the country for the future. Over several budgets now, we see that this is missing, and this has led to the underperformance of Mauritius, which has been aggravated by the COVID-19 pandemic and the Ukraine-Russia war. All stakeholders were looking for a sense of direction, and we have had a catalogue of electoral bribes disguised as social measures. The younger generation are once again left behind by this government and are still in the dark as to what the future holds for them. Their future is to pick up the bills for this government's fiscal incompetence. This false prospectus is a crime that will sadly not put its perpetrators in prison, but the whole country in the chains of rising inflation and the abyss of continuing massive debt. For all the goodies people think they have been handed out, the stark reality is the whole country is condemned by this budget to face a bad and ugly future. There has been no creation of new economic pillars to generate wealth for the country and the population. The ugliest part of this criminal budget is that we all face the dire consequences of financial incompetence under the shadow of a great illusion that we are being enriched. I thank you for your attention at these early hours of the morning.
Thank you very much, Honourable Ramdani, please.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I thank you for the opportunity to address to the House on what I would qualify as the mastermind of the Honourable Minister of Finance under the able leadership of the Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, the world is facing testing times. following the COVID-19, the war between Ukraine and Russia, and the lack of visibility as a result. This government is working tirelessly to ensure that there is continuity in development, protection, and well-being of its people, and ensuring the economic recovery through diligent measures. This budget, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, as explained by the Honourable Prime Minister, was a very complex exercise given the current context worldwide. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, yesterday morning, I listened to the leader of the opposition who debated on the appropriation bill, and he stated, he being the Minister of Finance in 2012 and his leader, they work for the people. But let me show to you a infamous newspaper titled Budget 2012, les syndicalistes trouvent que Luc Savier-Duval favorise le secteur privé. Let me quote some person. Tulsirat Benidine, dirigeant de la NTUC, déplore qu'il appelle un manque de considération pour les travailleurs. Nous sommes déçus. Nous nous attendions à plus de mesures pour les employés, une politique de création de l'emploi. Par exemple, nous ne savons toujours pas quel est le seuil du salaire minimal, affirme-t-il. M. Radhakrishna Sadien, président de la GSA, affirme que c'est le privé qui obtient la large part de la budget. Concernant la formation des fonctionnaires, je pense que le gouvernement doit garder le contrôle et ne pas privatiser, soutient-il. And then at the end, la Confédération de travailleurs du secteur privé, CTSP. The people threw you out in 2014 and you are still in Karokan. And secondly, Mr. Speaker, sir, let me also quote. The leader of the opposition is telling that l'Alliance des désespoirs is a quick fix solution. Let me quote from Hansard, from his colleague, Honorable Bhagwan, when he's not here. Let me quote, Mr. Speaker, sir, the exemption of duties on shampoo, deodorant, démaquillant, teinture, ongles won't change the life of people. Shampoo, there is not even water. So let not us discuss on that. The working class is very deceived. This is a type of budget the leader of opposition was doing, and now he is criticizing this government for the good job that the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance is doing. Let me again cite the Honorable Mohammed just cited Lee Kuan Yew as recipe to my colleague Honorable Oduyal. Let me remind Honorable Osman that Honorable Oduyal has a best political recipe. Just ask your leader, whom he sent in Karokan during the last election. His recipe is a social work, love for the people, help the people day and night. And he started at grassroots level of the village council and chairman of the district council, so many occasionally, continuously working hard for the people of constituency number 10. And I'm from Port as PPS over there. So I will come again I will come again. I will get a chance to reply to Honorable Mohammed again. Let me come back, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. I must admit that many of us were admirably surprised to see the bold measures announced by the Honorable Minister of Finance in his budget, and as rightly termed, with the people for the people. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, my address to the House will be threefold, namely, a budget for everyone, my constituency as PPS number 6 and 10, and tantrums of the opposition members. Mr. Speaker, sir, this budget caters for every segment of the Mauritian population. The Honorable Minister of Finance has been very meticulous in his approach and ensured that through this budget, no one was left behind. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, this budget is a budget for continuity, and it clearly shows the will and the ability of this government under the leadership of the Honorable Prime Minister to double our effort to ensure a successful economic recovery, despite a lack of clarity in the international scene. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I wish to place on record that I am proud to be part of this government, which has shown time and again it is working for its people, and we walk the talk. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, this government, as a caring government, through the Honorable Minister of Finance, has taken bold measures, just to name a few: increase in pension, CSG, retirement benefit, income allowance, housing scheme, reduction in income tax, maintaining gas cylinder price and bread price. And talking about cylinder price, as per Honorable Onkechi, if you ask a question in the Parliament, it means literally that you have done the work. So I will ask one question myself. Where were you when the gas cylinder was 340 rupees? Not on the street, but in the Parliament, tap la table. Abolition of municipal tax, extension of the basic widow pension to the Muslim widows, increasing the daily bad weather allowance for fishers from 445 to 555, incentive to planters to boost local production of fruits and vegetables, and a prime à l'emploi. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, 350,000 individuals will obtain a monthly income allowance. 300,000 individuals will see an increase in their pension. 189,000 youth will receive a passport culture. 169,000 retirees will get a CSG retirement benefit. 110,000 households will no longer pay the municipal tax on their residence. 100,000 income taxpayers will have more money in their pocket. 18,000 households will benefit from an increased support under the social aid and the SRM. 13,000 families will receive a baby bonus. 10,000 individuals will now earn a CSG disability allowance, and 10,000 youth and women will be eligible to a prime à l'emploi. We are sensitive to the plight of our people. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, this is why, under the guidance of our leader and the Prime Minister, this government has gone the extra mile to provide relief to our people from all segments of our population. Further, the budget provides incentive to SMEs and business in general to sustain the drive to be back in business after the successive lockdowns. I have been around and met people of different walks of society in my constituency over the past few days, and I'm pleased to state in this House that there is a feel-good factor among the people. This budget and its compassionate dimension has sensibly restored the purchasing power of households in an increase in their disposable income, either directly through increase in pension and wages or through weighted measures in taxation policy. One of the extra-parliamentary voices has rightly stated that this is a budget that created wins for all amidst uncertainties in the price of fuel and instability in supply and price of commodities. My constituency as PPS, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I will now turn to what this government has achieved, and I will, at my level of my constituency, and we will have projects in 2022-2023 in my constituency also under Indian grant assistance for implementation of high-impact community development projects. I hereby express my gratitude and that of my constituents to the Indian High Commission and the Government of India. In this year's budget, the Honourable Minister of Finance earmarked an amount of 3.8 billion in the next fiscal year to continue the National Flood Management Programme, out of which 69 million is earmarked at Ville, Pechirafre and Pudo village, and 179 million at Bramstan, Sans Souci, Aude, Montagne Blanche, and Clémentia. And as my colleague and you yourself, Deputy Speaker, and the Honourable Bola, are aware of how many projects are being implemented in constituency number 10. I will come to constituency number 6, Fondisac. Despite testing times, we did not remove regional development from our agenda, which remain amongst our priorities, and I am pleased to report to the House that the major drain project at Fondisac is nearly completed. Our constituents in Fondisac will also benefit from a market fair in 2022-2023. An agreement is on the way for the release of 4 ampères of land from Compagnie Montchoisy Limité in view of this project. The Pamplemousse District Council will implement the market fair project. 1 billion rupees will be invested in water distribution pipes project, including replacement of pipes in Fondisac. Mr. Deputy Speaker, Sir, Grand Bay, the people of Mauritius know very well how important the sea and the beaches are to one of the pillars of our economy, which is the tourism industry, and constituency number 6 form an integral part of it. We must not forget about the importance of looking after the well-being of our nature. In this context, the Beach Management Plan Phase 1 at Public Beach Montchoisy in my constituency was inaugurated on 9 April 2022. And now in this budget, provision has also been made for implementation of Beach Management Plan at Grand Bay. Many infrastructural advances are being implemented, such as renovation of the local health center dispensaire at Grand Bay is near completion and soon will be available for the public. In order to make traffic more fluid in Grand Bay, more particularly in Sunset Boulevard, a lay-by for bus has already been started. An envelope of more than 5 million has been allocated by the government to start this project for the safety of users of the road, whereby the current bus stop is very busy. Furthermore, some 1.1 billion will be provided for the implementation of sewage infrastructure projects in various regions, including Grand Bay. Distribution has already been started in the context of the celebration of Environment Day at Grand Bay. Drain projects such as Mosquée Road, Grand Bay will start shortly. New consultancy is already working at Concarol, Grand Bay by NU. And this is because of our Honourable Minister Bobby Ram that is working diligently on these projects. Beach Authority will be restructuring the beach at Pointe Canonier, implementation of mini soccer pitch at Sochi's through Indian grant. Resurfacing of several roads at Grand Bay, Pointe Canonier, Pérébert has already been undertaken by the NDU. Pudodo Village, the fruitful collaboration of the NDU and other stakeholders ensured the completion of the terminus near Pudo Hospital, which was long overdue, thanks to the Honourable Minister Ganu and my colleague Avinash Tilak. Drain solution at Cité EDC and Bois Loiseau Pudo village are in the making, and the NDU will implement projects in these localities in a very short term. Renovation of religious places like Arya Sabha has already been completed. With regard to resurfacing of road, we have completed all the project earmarked in fiscal year 2021-2022. Moreover, Mr. Deputy Speaker, provision has been made for a new community health center at Ville. My running mate for constituency number 6, the Honorable Minister of Art and Cultural Heritage, will be particularly pleased to know that a 20 million has been earmarked for the setting up of the National Art Center, including a recording studio at Réunion Morel, Petit-Rafré, and inhabitants of Petit-Rafré will soon get their bin. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, Goodland Village, I am pleased to know that provision has been made for construction of mini soccer pitch at Saint-Antoine, Goodland by NDU. Let me enumerate some upcoming infrastructural advancement. Construction of multipurpose hall will soon be started by local authorities in collaboration with NDU. Leveling and turfing of Belair football ground at Goodlands is welcomed by the youth of the region. New market fair at Goodland, renovation of Belmont Cemetery. In addition, the CWA is installing water tanks in localities with water issues, and I'm pleased to know that 3 water tanks have been placed in a plot of state land released by the NDU. This, Mr. Speaker, sir, Deputy Speaker, sir, will provide relief to localities such as Mamzezan and Triang at Goodland. I wish to place on record my sincere thanks to the Honorable Prime Minister and other colleague minister for listening to our representations and helping in improving the life of our constituents. Mr. Speaker, sir, Grand Gobe, Melville, the people of Goodland, Grand Gobe, and other localities will benefit from the intra-locality connectivity following the completion of Kali Road, which is a link road from Melville to Goodlands, especially when the new market fair at Goodlands will become operational in the near future. An envelope of 7 million has been allocated to the NDU for the redevelopment of the Grand Gobe crematorium, which has long been neglected. The work has already started this week and will last a month. The inhabitants of neighboring villages such as Rochetea, Melville, Kalojin also use this crematorium for the cremation of their deceased, and it will comprise of structures like shelter, wall, garbage can, among others will be reviewed and water tank will be installed. Resurfacing of roads such as Aryamandi Road has already been completed. Rochetea, provision has been made in this budget for the football ground and multi-purpose hall at Rochetea village. Reprofiling of the main road, which is an ongoing project, and renovation of Mandir, Ram Krishna Mandir. Upcoming projects of local health center, which will be funded by the Indian grant at Cap Malere, reprofiling of the dangerous curve at Pavillon Cap Malere with drain and pavement will be soon be implemented. Mr. Speaker, sir, Deputy Speaker, sir, the voice of the people is the voice of God. The electorate has spoken in November 2019 and chose this government based on its electoral manifesto. The recent incidents that we witnessed are not par hasard. There has been, since November 2019, a continuous effort by some members of the opposition to incite the population to create a false narrative around the organization of the election, motion of no confidence, and social unrest, and so on. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, with COVID-19, economies are struggling worldwide, but Mauritius has been recognized as one of the few countries where the government has supported its people. There is a series of bold measures which have been taken under the leadership of the Honorable Prime Minister, namely the Wage Assistance Scheme, Self-Employed Assistance Scheme, Minimum Wage, Negative Income Tax, Old Age Pension, Portable Retirement Gratuity Fund, subsidies on various items, just to name a few. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, some members of the opposition are trying to surf on this government's bold decision, claiming that it's the result of their pressure, and then a few minutes later, criticizing the budget. They should decide once and for all. Which is which? There are no two ways about it. Mr. Speaker, sir, little do these members of the opposition know that the Mauritian population is intelligent enough to decipher who is pretending to work and who is actually working for the betterment of this nation. The attitude of the opposition confirms their anti-patriotic intention and hidden political agenda to try to destabilize the government for personal gain. The bold measures taken by this government is ensuring that our economy is getting back on track despite the agenda of the opposition members who are in electoral campaign in permanence. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, if former Prime Minister who fooled the population by his slogan, pour sans autre la vie dans son jour, and we all know whose life he really changed, Lady NS. And now, he is giving lesson to this government on pension. Let me tell him, it is this government which increased the pension to 5,000 rupees in 2014, and 9,000 in 2019, and now gradually increasing even more. Since from the start, I am listening to the opposition orators, particularly of the Labour Party. They are using Gandhi philosophies and Sanskrit. My honorable friend, no, not honorable member, said one thing to my colleague, supposedly to Bobby Airam, Vinash Kale Viprit Buddhi. But let me tell you, this is for your leader. This applies to your leader, not to a young honorable member who is working for the country. And I'm not finished. I'm not finished. Hearing all the lies of Honorable Shakil Mohammed.
Honorable Mohammed. Order. Honorable Mohammed. Honorable Mohammed. Let's have a break. Thank you very much. Please be seated. And Honorable Mohammed, Honorable Ariram, I'm in the mood to sending people home now. So please get on with the debate. It's a last warning to both of you. Both of you. Please continue.
Yes. Again, good morning, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. I will finish because I could not complete my sentence. A former Prime Minister who fooled the population by his slogan, pour sans autres la vie de sans ou. And then we all know whose life he really changed, Lady NS. And now he is giving lesson to this government on pension. It is this government which increased the pension to 5,000 rupees in 2014 and 9,000 rupees in 2019, and now gradually increasing even more. Mr. Speaker, sir, let us not forget that the then alliance of Labour Party and MMM qualified this decision as demagogy. Was this decision demagogy or the reflection of the leader of Labour Party, which was qualified in 2014 as Katori? This is a point to ponder on. They are the last person who have the moral right to come and give us lesson to this government. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, let me conclude by saying that this responsible government under the leadership of the Honourable Prime Minister will continue to be a government for the people despite difficult times globally. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir.
Thank you very much, Honorable Rantou, please.
Monsieur le Vice-président, tout d'abord, je n'ai aucun doute quant à la compétence de mon collègue et ami, le ministre Doyal, et je trouve honteux de venir faire des commentaires sur l'intelligence des membres de cette Assemblée nationale. Monsieur le Vice-président, avec le peuple, pour le peuple, certains esprits chagrins n'ont rien trouvé de mieux à faire que d'ironiser sur le thème de ce budget 2022. Mais laissons ces esprits chagrins et frustrés à leur bas calcul politicien. Car avec ce nouveau budget, nous pouvons une nouvelle fois constater avec un sentiment de fierté et de satisfaction l'engagement sérieux de ce gouvernement qui s'écrit, je cite, « L'humain surtout, l'humain avant tout », et cela malgré un contexte économique extrêmement difficile. C'est le troisième exercice budgétaire auquel je participe en tant que parlementaire dans cette auguste Assemblée, et je n'ai pas besoin de vous expliquer dans quel contexte difficile les précédents budgets, ainsi que ce nouveau budget 2022-2023, ont été présentés à la population. Car nous savons tous à ce stade quels sont les défis auxquels nous avons eu à faire face durant ces dernières années. Quand je dis « nous », je parle du gouvernement et de la population mauricienne. Et une chose est sûre, Monsieur le Président, alors que nous entamons la troisième année de notre mandat au service de la population, c'est que ce gouvernement est resté constant dans son approche et dans ses actions vers une société plus inclusive où chaque Mauricien trouve son compte. Ce budget en est une nouvelle preuve supplémentaire. Avant de continuer mon intervention, Monsieur le Président, permettez-moi de féliciter le ministre des Finances, l'honorable Renganaden Padayachi, guidé par le Premier ministre, l'honorable Pravin Kumar Jagnat, d'être venu de l'avant avec un budget où chaque frange de la population se retrouve et surtout d'avoir présenté un budget avec autant de considération pour les plus vulnérables. Monsieur le Président, j'ai également une pensée spéciale pour tous ceux qui ont contribué à cet exercice budgétaire. Nous ne devons pas oublier toute l'équipe qui a travaillé en backstage pendant de longues semaines pour faire de ce budget une réalité. Ce n'est jamais une tâche facile et le personnel du ministère des Finances a su traduire la philosophie de ce gouvernement, c'est-à-dire placer les citoyens au cœur de toutes ces décisions. Nous pouvons également remercier tous les stakeholders de la société civile et du monde économique qui ont donné de leur temps, de leur technicité et de leur expertise dans cet objectif commun. Oui, il a fallu du flair et de la perspicacité afin d'aboutir à un tel budget. L'histoire retiendra, Monsieur le Président, et le peuple mauricien se souviendra qu'en période de crise, où la vie de chacun d'entre nous a basculé, comment le Premier ministre et ce gouvernement ont montré de la compassion et une grande solidarité à notre égard. Moi-même, je tiens en tant que femme, que maman, en tant que citoyenne et en tant que députée représentante de la circonscription numéro 4, à témoigner mon appréciation et ma gratitude pour ce budget 2022. Monsieur le Président, avec la guerre russo-ukrainienne, la situation pandémique qui perdure dans le monde, les grandes nations et même notre île Maurice ont tous eu à faire face à l'inflation. Les peuples ont vu leur pouvoir d'achat se diminuer et même si nous avons eu à faire face à des critiques pour ne pas avoir réduit le prix de l'essence, notre choix était clair. Il était impératif et urgent de présenter des mesures répondant aux besoins et aux attentes des citoyens mauriciens et surtout de ceux qui sont le plus frontalement affectés par la hausse des prix. Sans l'aide du gouvernement, ces ménages mauriciens qui n'ont pas les moyens de subvenir aux besoins essentiels de leur famille seraient tout simplement dans l'impossibilité de joindre les deux bouts. Ce budget 2022 du ministre Padayachi est courageux quand il est un véritable bouclier contre la misère. C'est ainsi qu'avec le peuple et pour le peuple que le ministre des Finances propose de maintenir les subsides sur les produits essentiels comme le gaz ménager, le riz et le pain maison. Une somme de 1,4 milliard est allouée pour une subvention de 591,25 roupies sur un sac de 25 kg de farine aux boulangers. Ainsi, les boulangers continueront donc à payer le sac de 25 kg de farine à 108,75 roupies au lieu de 700 roupies. C'est courageux de la part de notre gouvernement et c'est surtout inédit, car aucun gouvernement auparavant n'avait pris autant à cœur la situation des citoyens mauriciens et certainement pas l'opposition qui aujourd'hui se permet d'ironiser sur ce budget pour le peuple et avec le peuple. Monsieur le Président, la nation mauricienne se souvient encore aujourd'hui que c'est le gouvernement travailliste qui, sous le prétexte qui n'est pas toujours de concilier les impératifs économiques avec les exigences sociales, avait choisi d'abolir la distribution des pains dans nos écoles primaires, sans aucune considération pour les Tidimoun. Le ministre des Finances d'alors avait pris cette mesure cruelle et sans pitié, sans se soucier du fait que les enfants des familles défavorisées allaient en souffrir, car nombreux étaient ces enfants qui dépendaient de la distribution de ces pains pour manger. Comment nos enfants peuvent-ils se concentrer en classe avec le ventre vide? Ils n'avaient pas compris alors, ou plutôt faisaient semblant de ne pas comprendre que de nombreuses personnes comptaient beaucoup, non seulement sur la distribution de pain, mais aussi sur la subvention sur les produits alimentaires de base, une façon bien cruelle et cynique d'écraser plus les pauvres et de leur nier toute égalité des chances. Sans pitié, Monsieur le Président. Et aujourd'hui, c'est l'honorable Anquetil qui vient nous parler de détruire la misère. Monsieur le Président, le peuple mauricien se souviendra qu'au contraire, le gouvernement de Pravin Jugnauth a su déployer les moyens nécessaires pour maintenir le pain maison à 2,60 roupies afin que chaque famille mauricienne puisse se procurer son pain quotidien, et cela même si nous faisons face à une situation sans précédent. De ce côté de la Chambre, nous déployons des mesures sociales appropriées afin de continuer à soutenir le pouvoir d'achat de la population. Monsieur le Président, Même si nous sommes toujours en période de crise et que nous subissons encore les méfaits de la pandémie, le gouvernement poursuit, malgré les impératifs économiques, son programme gouvernemental à vocation sociale et inclusive. Ce budget préconise la taxe municipale sur les résidences familiales urbaines. Cet engagement avait été pris en 2019 afin de régler l'inégalité entre les résidents urbains et ruraux. Ainsi, ce sont environ 110 000 familles qui résident dans des villes qui économiseront de l'argent, n'ayant plus à payer la taxe municipale à partir du 1er juillet 2022. Par contre, Monsieur le Président, la population se rappelle bien alors que de 2005 à 2010, le paysage économique était encore plus favorable qu'il ne l'est aujourd'hui. Le gouvernement d'alors n'avait pas hésité d'introduire la National Residential Property Tax, taxant ainsi les propriétaires des maisons avec des revenus modestes. Encore une mesure sans cœur et impitoyable envers les plus modestes de nos concitoyens. Et vous remarquerez bien que ce sont les mêmes qui ont introduit ces mesures injustes à l'époque qui aujourd'hui ricanent de notre budget social et inclusif. Et Monsieur le Président, comme il faut toujours un prétexte pour justifier l'injustifiable, le prétexte trouvé à l'époque pour supprimer les subventions sur les frais d'examen du School Certificate et du Higher School Certificate avait été une légère hausse des tarifs du Cambridge International Examination en 2007. Voilà la raison trouvée par le ministre des Finances d'alors pour mieux endetter les parents et leur faire payer les frais d'examen. Alors que nous, aujourd'hui, malgré le fait que nous subissons la pression inflationniste, nous avons un ministre des Finances qui a un grand mérite pour son sens d'abnégation, quand avec ce budget, il a su faire provision afin de soutenir le programme de développement et de l'éducation. Si nous voulons, Monsieur le Vice-président, d'une société plus juste et égalitaire, et c'est ce que ce gouvernement veut, il est impératif que chaque enfant mauricien ait droit à une éducation de qualité afin d'atteindre son plein potentiel. Il est de notre devoir, en tant que gouvernement juste et responsable, de donner à chaque enfant mauricien la chance d'aller à l'école indépendamment de sa statut social. Monsieur le Président, l'effort de ce gouvernement afin de maintenir l'éducation primaire, secondaire et tertiaire gratuite est une initiative fort louable. Un cachet de 18,3 milliards de roupies à cet effet est un investissement judicieux. Nos jeunes sont l'avenir de l'île Maurice et nous travaillerons pour que ces derniers soient des acteurs du monde de demain. La pauvreté ou le manque de moyens ne devrait pas être une barrière à l'éducation. Si nos enfants ont du potentiel, ils peuvent aspirer à un degré ou même à une maîtrise aujourd'hui, quand les études supérieures restent accessibles grâce à notre plan de soutien. La clé de la réussite, c'est l'éducation, et en tant que gouvernement responsable, nous sommes conscients que nous voulons que nos enfants puissent donner le meilleur d'eux-mêmes. Pour cela, il est important qu'ils puissent évoluer dans un environnement propice et que les établissements scolaires soient équipés et maintenus correctement. L'initiative d'attribuer un cachet important à 53 écoles gérées par des ONG, incluant le service diocésain de l'éducation catholique, sous forme de subventions pour la maintenance et la réparation des bâtiments, ainsi que pour l'achat d'équipements éducatifs. C'est une démarche, Monsieur le Président, qui démontre non seulement l'engouement de ce gouvernement d'assurer une éducation holistique à tous, mais aussi sa volonté de collaborer avec toutes les institutions éducatives dans un élan de fédérer tous autour d'une cause aussi noble et importante qu'est l'éducation pour le peuple mauricien. Et toujours dans un souci de promouvoir davantage l'éducation, le ministre des Finances a aussi prévu des fonds pour la construction d'une école primaire, de nouvelles salles de classe, d'aménagements sportifs, administratifs et scientifiques dans certaines institutions afin que nos élèves de la République fréquentent des établissements propres, aménagés comme il faut et bien équipés. Sous le même chapitre, Monsieur le Président, permettez-moi de remercier la ministre de l'Éducation pour les travaux de réaménagement récemment complétés à l'école Moabert Fouga à Montaillon et les travaux qui débuteront bientôt dans les écoles de Crèvecoeur, de Vallée des Prêtres et de Morcel-Cabon à Cité-la-Cure. Monsieur le Président, pour clore le chapitre de l'éducation, les mesures proposées dans ce budget n'ont pas laissé pour compte les plus vulnérables de notre société. Car, comme dit l'adage, on juge la grandeur d'une nation à la façon dont les plus faibles sont traités. L'honorable Anquetil ne me dira pas le contraire. Sensible aux conditions et aux besoins des écoles se trouvant dans des régions défavorisées, une subvention unique de 50 000 roupies sera allouée à quelques 125 écoles préprimaires s'y trouvant afin de soutenir davantage l'éducation de nos tout-petits. Il est crucial de donner un bon départ pédagogique aux jeunes, surtout ceux qui viennent des quartiers défavorisés. Monsieur le Président, j'ai là une pensée spéciale pour 2 écoles saines, notamment Association of Disability Services Providers, qui se trouve à Montaillon dans ma circonscription, et Otis Maurice, fondée par Mme Géraldine Alifon, qui nous a malheureusement quittés, qui habitait dans ma circonscription à Crèvecoeur. Je me réjouis des mesures de subvention étendues par le gouvernement à la hauteur de 155 millions de roupies à ces écoles Special Need Education, car étant proche de ces 2 institutions que je viens de mentionner, je suis consciente de leur quotidien et du travail formidable qu'ils font pour ces enfants ayant des besoins éducatifs spéciaux, des difficultés d'apprentissage et des enfants en situation de handicap. Monsieur le Président, notre plan de soutien aux personnes en situation de handicap ne s'est pas arrêté aux écoles saines. Outre les multiples mesures préconisées pour ce segment de la population, ce qui retient le plus notre attention, c'est cette injustice rectifiée par ce gouvernement pour les personnes souffrant d'une invalidité de moins de 60% et qui n'étaient pas éligibles de la Basic Invalid Pension. Et même si ces personnes étaient dans l'incapacité de travailler pour gagner leur vie, pour subvenir aux besoins essentiels de leur famille. Et il y en avait parmi eux des mères et des pères de famille qui jusqu'ici menaient une vie normale, mais suite à un accident de travail ou de la route ou une maladie quelconque, ont vu leur vie se transformer en se retrouvant en situation de handicap. Aujourd'hui, ce gouvernement sensible à la souffrance de ces familles a été à l'écoute et a répondu à leurs besoins. Et nous avons eu le courage et l'audace de faire sauter le verrou pour les personnes dont l'invalidité est comprise entre 40 et 59%. Ainsi, une CSG, Disability Allowance, a été introduite et ce sont environ 10 000 personnes qui pourront pousser un ouf de soulagement. Seul un ministre des Finances ayant la volonté politique pourrait accomplir cela. Monsieur le Président, ce budget a été rédigé de façon méthodique avec des mesures systématiques pour chaque secteur afin de répondre aux exigences de la situation actuelle. Ainsi donc, ce budget vise 1. À renforcer notre croissance économique et notre résilience face aux chocs éventuels. Les effets combinés de la crise sanitaire et de la guerre en Ukraine ont fait ressortir de façon éclatante notre besoin d'être autosuffisant et plus autonome. 2. Poursuivre notre parcours vers un développement durable et inclusif. Avec les effets accélérés du réchauffement climatique, il nous faut revoir notre façon de produire, de consommer et d'agir. Sinon, quel monde laisserons-nous à nos enfants et quels enfants laisserons-nous au monde? Investir dans notre population afin qu'ensemble, nous écrivons l'histoire de notre République. Monsieur le Président, je suis tentée de vanter les multiples vertus de ce budget, même si certains de l'autre côté de la Chambre ont du mal à comprendre l'impact de ces mesures stratégiques et innovantes dans cet exercice budgétaire. Mais comme le temps me fera défaut, je me contenterai de m'exprimer sur 3 chapitres auxquels j'accorde un intérêt particulier. J'apporterai donc ma contribution sur les mesures 1. Pour le développement et la promotion de la jeunesse et sport. 2, sur la transition vers des véhicules électriques. 3, sur le programme national de gestion des inondations. Monsieur le Président, étant moi-même un athlète et venant d'une famille de sportifs où mon père était lui-même champion de Maurice des 400 mètres, des 800 mètres et a détenu le record des relais 4x400 mètres pendant les années 80, il a consacré une bonne partie de sa carrière au service du sport comme coach national de demi-fond à Maurice et comme professeur d'éducation physique. Très tôt, je me suis imprégné des valeurs et des vertus du sport. Le sport, c'est comme l'école. Il contribue à faire des citoyens épanouis, autonomes et éclairés de demain. Nous avons fait face à une crise sanitaire inédite où ces 2 dernières années ont été rudes économiquement et humainement. Cela a remis en question la capacité de nos athlètes de pouvoir s'entraîner, de participer à des compétitions ou de se réunir. Il est important pour un athlète de rester en compétition et de toujours essayer d'améliorer sa performance. Pour cela, il faut donner à nos athlètes des opportunités de participer davantage à des compétitions. Ainsi, nous donnerons un soutien à nos athlètes pour qu'ils participent à divers événements de haut niveau afin de les encourager à viser plus haut. La semaine dernière, Maurice a fièrement accueilli 450 athlètes d'élite et délégués de 54 pays pour les 22e African Senior Athletic Championship au Côte d'Or National Sports Complex. Et pendant qu'on est en train de faire tout cela, Monsieur le Président, la population a dû prendre bonne note de tous les critiques que ce gouvernement a eu à faire face quant à l'investissement pour la construction du complexe sportif de Côte d'Or. Et c'est dans ce même complexe sportif que nous avons témoigné de belles performances où nos athlètes mauriciens ont fait la fierté de notre quadricolore et dont même la BBC en a fait mention. Je félicite le ministre des Sports pour son dévouement pour nos jeunes et nos athlètes. Et vous savez quoi, Monsieur le Vice-président, comment l'opposition appelle le complexe de Côte d'Or? Un éléphant blanc. Et cela me fait penser aux cybercités d'Ébène, qu'ils avaient aussi surnommé éléphant blanc et aujourd'hui emploient presque 40 000 jeunes. Eh bien, Monsieur le Vice-président, si c'est cela être un éléphant blanc, créer des emplois pour nos jeunes et accueillir des prestations internationales de haut niveau où nous voyons briller nos athlètes, eh bien, je fais un appel au Premier ministre, donnez-nous plus d'éléphants blancs de ce genre. Ce gouvernement a été à l'écoute et il est conscient que le sport est au cœur même de la vie sociale. C'est pourquoi on a déployé les efforts pour assurer la continuité du sport en prévoyant 50 millions de roupies pour la préparation des athlètes et l'organisation des Jeux de la Commission de la jeunesse et des sports de l'océan Indien. En décembre de cette année, 30 millions de roupies pour la préparation de nos athlètes aux Jeux des îles de l'océan Indien en 2023 et aux Jeux olympiques de 2024. Et une subvention spéciale de 15 000 roupies à nos athlètes professionnels de haut niveau pour l'achat d'équipements. De plus, Monsieur le Président, 50 millions de roupies seront alloués aux fédérations sportives pour permettre aux athlètes de se préparer aux Jeux de haut niveau. Monsieur le Président, je souhaiterais voir une meilleure collaboration entre les fédérations sportives et le ministère des Sports. Et là, je pense plus particulièrement aux clubs de judo qui se trouvent dans ma circonscription et qui attendent toujours d'être affiliés à la Fédération mauricienne de judo. Nos judokas de Sainte-Croix, de Cité-la-Cure, de Vallée-des-Prêtres ont du talent. Ce sont de vrais passionnés et ils attendent d'être reconnus à leur juste valeur. Pour eux aussi, participer aux compétitions et d'avoir leur licence d'athlète et de bénéficier des facilités offertes par la Fédération. Je suis persuadée que le ministre des Sports ne restera pas insensible à mon appel et qu'il interviendra pour accompagner et guider nos judokas dans cette démarche. Je fais aussi un appel au ministre des Sports. Quand je pense qu'il faut plus de femmes à la tête des fédérations sportives, peut-être qu'il pourrait promouvoir cette proposition auprès des fédérations et encourager plus de femmes à se lancer. Monsieur le Président, le sport est un enjeu de santé publique, surtout à une époque où la sédentarité fait des ravages. C'est un enjeu d'épanouissement pour nos jeunes. C'est un espace privilégié pour l'apprentissage de la citoyenneté, de la tolérance, mais aussi des règles qui nous permettent de mieux vivre ensemble. Mais c'est surtout la clé même de notre résilience mauricienne. Avec le peuple et pour le peuple, restons unis pour la continuité du sport à Maurice. Monsieur le Président, il y a quelque temps de cela, j'avais présenté un Private Members Motion sur l'utilisation des véhicules électriques comme suite. The government shall continue its efforts to encourage the use of electric vehicles in Mauritius. Je suis ravie de constater que ce budget a fait provision pour toute une série de mesures afin d'accélérer la transition vers les véhicules électriques. Nous avons tous été impactés par la hausse des prix du carburant et d'une part, ces mesures visent à réduire notre dépendance aux importations des produits pétroliers, c'est aussi une vision précise de notre contribution à la transition énergétique et écologique. Nous avons placé les véhicules verts et le transport vert au cœur de la stratégie de la décarbonisation du secteur du transport de notre île. Cette démarche éco-responsable ne s'arrête pas en si bon chemin, puisque ce budget, Monsieur le Président, propose d'introduire une taxe négative à la hauteur de 10%, avec un seuil maximal montant jusqu'à 200 000 roupies pour tout achat d'un véhicule électrique neuf par un particulier. Monsieur le Président, quant aux mesures pour la gestion des inondations, si c'est d'une importance capitale pour nous tous, d'ailleurs, dans ma circonscription, il y a plusieurs endroits qui sont affectés par les inondations. Le budget 2021-2022, lors du budget 2021-2022, une somme de 11,7 milliards avait été allouée pour ma circonscription pour la construction des drains et il y a eu plusieurs projets mis en chantier qui ont déjà fait leurs preuves. Le projet de 140 millions de roupies complété à 80% à Moncellement-la-Vallée à Sainte-Croix est déjà efficace. Si les habitants de ce Moncellement ont beaucoup souffert, ou certains sont encore traumatisés par des inondations auxquelles ils ont eu à faire face auparavant, aujourd'hui, c'est une chose du passé. Pendant les dernières pluies, les drains ont fonctionné et les maisons n'ont pas été inondées. Idem, Monsieur le Président, pour citer Romain à Richter, où, avec seulement la première phase complétée du projet, nous avons eu une nette amélioration et nous rassurons les habitants de Cité-Romain que la deuxième phase du projet arrive très bientôt. Monsieur le Président, les habitants de Sainte-Croix, Vallée des Prêtres, Terre-Rouge, Cité-Romain, Moncellement-Goulamali et Moncellement-Raffray peuvent être rassurés quand un budget de 157 millions sera alloué pour continuer notre programme de gestion des inondations dans la circonscription. Monsieur le Président, permettez-moi là de dénoncer l'hypocrisie de certains membres de l'opposition. Car ils ont fait plusieurs critiques sur le montant alloué dans le budget 2021-2022 pour la construction des drains afin de régler les problèmes d'inondation. Mais, Monsieur le Président, quand un endroit subit des inondations, ce sont les premiers à se rendre sur place, non pas pour aider, mais pour blâmer le gouvernement, pour juger et semer la zizanie et créer du contenu pour leurs réseaux sociaux. Je prends par exemple les récentes inondations survenues en mars dernier à Vallée des Prêtres, à Moncellement-Ramlagun dans ma circonscription. Un membre de l'opposition s'est vite rendu sur place pour faire de jolis petits TikTok, alors que mes collègues et moi de la circonscription, nous étions à pied d'œuvre pour envoyer les secours et chercher de l'aide. Mais après ça, Monsieur le Président, ce membre de l'opposition, qu'a-t-il fait d'autre? Seulement instrumentaliser le malheur des autres. Quoi d'autre? Nous, les députés de la circonscription, nous sommes allés sur place pour témoigner de notre solidarité. Nous avons donné notre support et avons organisé plusieurs réunions de travail afin de résoudre promptement ce problème. Le Premier ministre lui-même est venu sur place pour faire un constat de la situation, sympathiser avec les habitants et les rassurer de son support. Monsieur le Président, nous avons déjà eu plusieurs rencontres avec les habitants et nous avons déjà identifié le problème. Et à l'heure où je vous parle, la première phase du projet a déjà débuté depuis le 27 avril et sera complétée à la fin de juin. Comme quoi, Monsieur le Président, ce ne sont que les tonneaux vides qui font le plus de bruit. De ce côté de la Chambre, nous serons toujours aux côtés de nos citoyens pour assurer leur bien-être et avec eux trouver des solutions à leurs problèmes. Monsieur le vice-président, notre rôle en tant que député, c'est de défendre les intérêts de nos mandats au Parlement, au Parlement et aussi d'être leur porte-parole. Et puisque ce budget, Monsieur le Président, parle et s'écrit avec le peuple et pour le peuple, quoi de plus légitime que de leur donner l'opportunité de s'exprimer sur ce budget? À l'entame de la dernière partie de mon intervention, j'accorderai donc cette partie de mon discours à quelques-uns de mes mandants en prêtant ma voix à Irina Tanviduki, âgée de 14 ans, de l'Emoyan. Je vous rassure, Monsieur le Vice-président, j'ai eu la permission de ses parents au préalable et je cite: The budget 2022 gives us lots of hope for a 2030 Go Green Mauritius, which was the vision of late Sir Anirudh Jagnat, where we will solely rely on renewable energy for sustainability. Each and every child of the Sand School which receive a hot lunch and free transport to school, irrespective of his social or financial background. This is a great measure, as some children cannot afford a proper and well-balanced meal. Full stomach makes a happy heart. Stay blessed, our Prime Minister, for this measure. Voici, en ses propres mots, ce que pense Irina de ce budget. Maintenant, au tour de Hansley et Léonore, en deuxième année d'université à Maurice, habitant de la cité La Cure, qui pense, lui, que my brothers and myself always felt safe despite the fact that we were poor. I can equate the end-of-month budget and long-term vision of my parents with this current budgetary exercise for the financial year 2020-2023, those of the past 3 years and the government program. It is a long-term vision for our country. It is about preparing each and every son and daughter of our motherland to be able to play a full role in a fair society. Monsieur le Président, il y a aussi Shubham de l'ECONU Sainte-Croix, who is of opinion that the world has severely been impacted by COVID-19 in the last 2 years, and our paradise island was not saved. Nevertheless, as time goes by, crises emerging, the government understands the plight of the population through the difficult times. An expected expansionary budget was presented to our nation. As an artist being in the audiovisual field, it will be much appreciated if more support was given to local artists in the film sector. Our nation has not and will not forget the great leader Sir Anirudh Jagnat in our political history. It is indeed much appreciated and in honor of the incredible achievement of the latter, this budget highlights the introduction of a SAG National Scholarship Scheme. Et finalement, Monsieur le Président, Madame Raksha Ramlakan de Montaillon, primary school educator de la langue créole, This budget made provision for the education sector up to an amount of 18.3 billion rupees. It is with great satisfaction that many parents welcome the measure of providing hot meals in all SEND schools. This is a very encouraging measure that will eventually help to make education accessible to a greater number of students with special needs. Secondly, the increase in grant to NGOs and SEDEC running SEND school provide the opportunity to increase social activities for the benefit of the population. However, it would be more appreciated if more support is given to all schools indistinctively at all levels to cater for mental health of all students. With the recent changes in education sector due to the pandemic, many students are struggling with emotional turmoil that did not exist in the past. A healthy mental state of students brings better results. Quoi que disent nos détracteurs, Monsieur le Président, la population a accueilli favorablement ce budget. To conclude, Mr. Speaker, sir, the message and the vision conveyed in this year's National Budget 2020-2023 is very clear. A message of resilience, empathy, and solidarity. A budget with the people, for the people, which have the primary objective to protect the social fabric of our country, an investment in our citizens, while at the same time pave the way towards a sustainable and a more resilient, self-sufficient future. We are well aware that it is not all over, and the road to full recovery is indeed a long one, and we do not have the luxury yet to flatter ourselves. However, under the guidance of the Prime Minister, this government has shown resilience by crafting and implementing a carefully thought out measures and policies which have up to now prevailed against all odds. Despite what the naysayers' opinion, we are on the right track to recovery. I thank you for your attention, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The Deputy
Thank you,
Speaker, sir,
Honourable
I
Minister,
move
please.
for the adjournment of the debates. See you later on.
The question is that the debate be now adjourned. Those in favour say aye, those against say no. The ayes have it.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I move for the adjournment of the Assembly to tomorrow, Tuesday, 14th June. Today, Tuesday, 14th June 2022 at 10:30 a.m.
The question is that the House be adjourned to Tuesday, 14th of June at 10:30 a.m. Those in favour say aye, those against say no. The ayes have it. And nobody have adjournment. Matthews, have a safe trip back home.